Great. Thank you very much, Kamala. You are very proficient. You juggle so many balls. It's incredible. But thanks again for having me and allowing us to be a sponsor. And Rahul, I look forward to sort of engaging with you guys on this panel, and hopefully we'll get some of the attendees to engage too. I've attended this week as much as possible. I did get back from vacation late Monday night, but I've I sort of heard some of the legitimate concerns, and as a representative of a family business, both as an owner and as a director, it's wonderful to sort of share those with this group, this forum, and then to continue to sort of develop my own knowledge of what we're about to confront. But I heard a lot of skepticism and reservations, some of which I shared. I heard things like we're losing humanity, the accountability. All these are associated with the introduction of artificial intelligence as we see it today. The bias, replacing fairness, possibly, and of course that bias is behind. It's in a black box. It's opaque, so we can't see what it is. We talked about transparency, and of course I wonder how will we achieve that given the complexity of artificial intelligence and then what's coming behind it with quantum computing, and the fact that you've got a cloud and you don't know where that cloud is, which continent, or if it's even over an ocean. So the complexity of how to figure out who, what, when, where, how did this happen, it kind of goes out the window. You've got this scaling globally. You've got this incredible speed of change, which I think we're all confronted with. And then, as I heard last night, I love the discussion last night of this replacement as we move from democracy to technocracy, and that replacement. I thought that was such an interesting conversation. And it sort of really opens the eyes very wide to the risk and the exposures that we take as myself as a director look to sort of navigate these companies that I sit on the boards of. So I resorted not to ChatGPT, but to a book written by Peter Bernstein. At least it's a quote by Peter Bernstein, who was an American economist back in the 50s. And I thought what he said, or at least his quote, is very appropriate for us today, as it's a task that I want to sort of take on with you guys. But he said, back in the 50s now, he said, the revolutionary idea that defines the boundary between modern times and the past is the mastery of risk, right? We've got to be a master of risk. We've got to take risk. He goes on to say that until men and women discovered a way across the boundaries of modern and past, the future was a mirror of the past, or the murky domain of oracles and soothsayers who held a monopoly over knowledge and anticipated events. So until we walk through those boundaries into the future, we were stuck in the past. We were looking at pictures, at summaries, at conclusions that soothsayers and oracles would put out for us. So I think that's a really good task to sort of take forward. And what I wanted to do is just spend the remaining time to give you some of the perspectives that I have sitting in our boards of the problems, but also of the opportunities, because I see this as a threat and an opportunity for these companies. And I want to sort of take you through my thoughts on that, and then obviously listen and learn from what your thoughts are. But the problem with directors is that we got to take responsibility. We've got to make decisions, and our decisions have to carry the consequences, not just on our own futures, but those of our shareholders, those of our employees, those of our clients, many stakeholders, as we've discussed already. So as I said before, I really have come to see, and I'm so happy to see the conclusions of many of these panels, is to see AI as an opportunity, because I think the positives far outweigh the negatives. And having just returned from vacation, I put forward the technology of a washing machine. And although the electric washing machine was created early in the 1900s, the 20th century, the amount of time, the amount of efficiency, the convenience, the capability, all these great things that it's offered us. And I see many of the same promises if we can just harness AI and use AI to its full benefits. So if I may level set, all of the ages that we've gone through in the past, whether it was the agricultural or the industrial, as we came through them, I think the quality of life for all of those individuals improved, right? You look at the industrial age, and the days of the hours worked in a day has shrunk considerably. The days of a week that we worked has shrunk considerably. And so I think by embracing these changes, we get better quality of life, and that's very much how I see artificial intelligence helping us. And I think I love what Dr. Kunin summarized. He said, AI is a lens, and it really is, because it's moving on from technology that we've all been battling with over the last few decades. So if you think back to like the Renaissance, and how individuals in London would have taken in those early presentations and theatrical events in the Globe. I mean, I've listened to Shakespeare, and I realize it takes multiple times to listen to him to fully get an appreciation for it. You have to have patience, you have to have stamina, you have to have resilience to get through it and truly understand it before you can appreciate it. I rest on the fact that having taken on these changes, we've all benefited by toiling less, by just having better health, more longevity in life, things like that. So I really encourage us to embrace this AI, because as I put it to our colleagues, is that it should clear up a lot of the messy work, the busy work, and allow these individuals, these professionals, to operate truly at the height of their license, at the front of their license. I think ignoring it, we have no choice. We can't ignore it. We've got to take it on. I did hear some fair criticism, I think, of boards, and that they were out of touch, possibly. And I think that's very understandable, right? I mean, certainly in organizations, the ages of our directors are probably the eldest in our firms, because they have the time to be a non-executive director. So I think that's fine, but it's not an excuse, because you still have to look at your board rosters, and you've got to infuse them with diversity, with breadth of who represents your stakeholders. So I think there's a lot to do there. And one of the themes I'll share with you guys is that you have to start small. And I know with Adobe, they've got their own AI suite. And we have been starting to use it. We've got younger members on our board who are suggesting the use of it. And we use it during our board meetings to give really precise, succinct summaries of 100-page documents, which, by the way, we shouldn't be looking at, because nobody in their right mind would go through it all. But AI through Adobe, just simply starting through Adobe on our PDFs, has given us incredible vision and sight to just very succinct summaries. So that's been really helpful. I'll tell you that we're already playing defense with customers, with employees. I've certainly seen at least one case now where an employee used ChatGPT to write their grievance against the company. Extremely well done, professional, hit on all the points. It took us a long time to sort of figure out how to respond to that, but I'm sure customers would do that too. So it's a tool that they can use. We've confronted it before. Social media was something that we've all been confronting, and whether it's Facebook, LinkedIn. I'll come on to LinkedIn later, as I know CCGI uses it. We put policies in place, and we put them in an employee handbook where they're readily available. They had to be short. They had to be legible. They had to be something that would truly impart knowledge and guidance to our employees. So I mentioned that also as a tool. I think your systems, your information systems, are really important, and we have a greater appreciation for that today. It was mentioned that we should just be looking at essential information, and I completely agree with that. Why hold more information than necessary in case you have a breach? There's just more to clean up. So looking at your systems, ensuring that they're optimal, that they maintain your confidential information. That's been very important. I think it's very important to provide full disclosure. Another tool and resource we've been using are these chatbots to help people, or at least to answer people. And of course, they know it's a chatbot, because that's what it appears as. And I think I just follow up with that you very quickly, when the chatbot realizes it can't communicate the problem with this person, they quickly move to a human, so that we can pick up the reins. But I mean, we've seen reports where hundreds of hours at the most awkward time of night have been provided to customers in many cases, and in most cases satisfactorily. So chatbots, again, have been something that we've used. And I think lastly, it's training for dangers. It was mentioned earlier that anti-money laundering has had, certainly for financial institutions, but not even financial institutions, auto dealers too. We've had to pay very close attention to that, to protect, to secure our business, and that has been extremely helpful in looking at the new ways that people are misusing technology, right? So LinkedIn, Kamala, I wanted to mention this because LinkedIn apparently now is the viper's lair, for some of these deep fakes, where they can pick up on relationships. And certainly in our most recent training, they showed us a video where a deep fake of a CEO on a video chat to his CEO, to his CFO, allowed her to obtain and react to his message, which was to send money to an errant account. And they did it. So I think we've been fortunate in the phishing emails that we've seen, that they all have or carry some error in them, that you can sometimes pick up on them. But we need to be prepared for a more professional criminal enterprise, taking advantage of us through artificial intelligence. So I think those were some of the points. I did want to mention too that I think for AI to be successful, it's got to be integrated, and it's got to be integrated in the pathways with which the employees are using it. So another example of where we're using it is in the Microsoft suite. They've got a Business Central, General Ledger, and there we are trying to quickly use their auto reconciliation, which we do each month. It can be done faster. It can be done less without a human, and of course, there's less errors when it's integrated and done, directly within the product suite. So these are all tools, I think, that we're getting the benefit of, even though we're a small family business. We certainly look to use to the full extent the resources, the tool, the software that we're using, to try and find resources. I think I'll close by just saying that I think it's really important. So my push, as I sit on these boards, is we have to move with technology, because I think what the setup here was innovation versus tradition. You can't stick in the past. You've got to move forward, right? So we've got to move forward. And so what I think is really important is that we start small. Utilize some of the resources that are embedded in the technology that we're using already. Attend forums like this where you can learn very quickly of errors that have been made, or successes that have been made. But I think we have to ensure that we keep the human elements, and I think that's something as a director you have to do, right? You've got to reconcile, you've got to trust but verify the information you're receiving, and therefore, I think it's really important that we keep the humanity there, that we maintain and verified truth, the security. Ethics is something that you guys were talking about, but the humanity. I think, frankly, if you can do that, if you can get the best of both worlds, if you can truly lower the weight that your employed workforce is having to carry, in greater and greater volumes by utilizing smart artificial intelligence, and you can keep that humanity, then you've used this new artificial intelligence, which will quickly expand to human intelligence, to agency AIs, all that sort of stuff. You can really start to use the technology to the benefit of the business. So I'll stop there.
Thank you so much, Alasdair. I think that you really gave us a lot of incredible information. But what really stuck with me as we talk about innovation versus tradition, you made a very very strong point that innovation has been good for us. It has improved quality of life for everyone. It has shrunken the work week, so there's more time for us to be able to have other things. So definitely it is, as you said, the responsibility of directors, then how we integrate this AI to ensure that we continue to innovate in this modern environment, but in such a way that it benefits everyone. So thank you so much for that. And now I'd like to ask Rahul to join us, and let's hear his perspective.
Thank you so much, Miss Ramprasad, for this opportunity. And even though I am about to be engaged in just 2 days, seeing your work ethic when I met you at Pegasus, controlling the preps for Governance Week, and to see it unfold here, it really inspired me to come out to deliver here for you today. And it's a privilege to sit through and to learn a lot from other businesses as well. And kudos to you for all of the hard work that you've put in so far, and I hope that you're happy. And please do not miscount the days you need to rest after this one. The panelists that were selected for this session, I can see what you did there with Mr. Alasdair coming out from a family-owned business and having that board of directors. He is literally embodying what innovation versus tradition stands for. Even I am a prime example of that. In my role, I have a board of directors who are all business owners across both Suriname and Guyana. And I am the one that carries out that mandate and that vision of the board. And they're all the idea generators and the big thinkers, and I'm the one to ensure that it gets done and expectations are managed. And I just want to go straight into it. When I think about family businesses, I think about two things: a legacy and a evolution. Now, businesses are oftentimes the backbone of what the economy is built on. Um, Besides trust and tradition, the kind of resilience you find in family-owned businesses, you may not find it in the corporate boardrooms, based on, of course, my experience. But the same legacy and evolution that these businesses have are the same things that make them vulnerable to the way things are changing. It makes them very vulnerable to what the future is hold. Um, I want to start as well by talking about two prime examples. So my reach is Suriname and Guyana, and both Suriname and Guyana, 60% of the private enterprises are actually family owned. You'll find them mostly on every street. The multinational hardware stores, the construction companies, agriculture, and even the distributors that were there on the mission that TTMA had. They're all family-owned businesses, but more so they are family legacies. When you look at the NNS Matai, the National Hardware, they've been around for so long. Um, Two examples that come to mind here in Guyana would be the Kafur store, which is right in my peripheral vision. And from Suriname, you have the Kirsten Group. Both of them originated from the 1950s and the 1970s as well. And these companies, the family-owned companies, would have survived a lot of the political shifts, economic crisis, and even generational handovers. But as the world changes rapidly, especially with the rise of AI and digital transformation, the real question is, how are these businesses being able to evolve without losing themselves? And when you look at governance, you really got to ask yourself, is it a blessing or is it more of a blind spot? And I'm pretty sure a lot of us here have seen a family-owned business where the governance model was the grandma or the grandpa makes all of the decisions as the older heads. There's an uncle who thinks he's the CEO, and then there's an Excel spreadsheet that probably lives in the head of one of the almost younger folks as well. You know, throughout a lot of my interactions with businesses over the last year, I once asked one of them, "Hey, do you have a board of directors? Do you have a founder?" And funny enough, he said, yes, he has a board of directors, and it's actually his dinner table. That's where all of the decisions happen, and that's where all the decisions are made. Now, in many traditional family farms or family businesses, governance is seen as much more informal. It is rooted in trust, loyalty, and of course, superiority or seniority as well. And there is, of course, some value in it, but in an increasingly complex world, that approach is just not enough. You need structure, accountability, formalization. Even for me, um, when I was introduced to the role of the Suriname Guyana Chamber of Commerce, it I had to be the one to develop the structure. That was the first few months, putting in the structure. What is it that the organization is going to function on? Where is it that we see it playing out? Everybody has it in their head, but it was my responsibility to take that further. All right. Um, my third point is that innovation is no longer optional. In the fast-paced world that we are living in, speed and transparency triumphs. Consumer want faster services, and suppliers demand digitized systems. Younger employees as well want to work in a data-driven, purpose-oriented organization. Governance from tradition to now must include things like tech adaptation, professional management, performance metrics. You oftentimes hear about people talking about KPIs. You know, family-owned businesses, they didn't know what a KPI is. Now we know, how important it is to align your businesses with this type of structure. Now, if your board is just family and lunch and an IT system or a computer, um, it's not innovative. You're literally just point blank surviving. And that is not the way you want to go as a family business. You want continuity. Um, I talked about Gaffurs, I talked about Kirsten. These are two of the companies that really, like I mentioned, pass through the economic crisis. They have the experience. Of course, in the beginning, there when it came to digitization, when it came to good governance, there must be some pushback. But you can see, for example, in Gaffurs, they implemented an ERP system, centralized their supply chain, and it was not just led by tradition; it was a necessity because of the rapid expansion that Guyana is going through, and the same for Kirsten. It was family owned, but now you can see that the family stepped away, and it's run by a board of directors. There's a CEO, and that is the trend that most family-owned businesses should really go towards. And both of these cases actually show us that innovation isn't necessarily letting go of your tradition. It literally means framing tradition in a way that allows the businesses to grow and flourish in a newfound world or a newfound environment, um, that we call this era. Um, Recently, when I was at the energy conference here in Suriname, I met a second generation business owner. Um, I can't remember his name, so let's call him Ravi for now. He had just returned from studying with a degree in international business management, and he came home. Um, as a college graduate, you feel like when you collect that degree and that certificate, you can change the world almost right away. And that was mindset. So he returned to his family of businesses, and he came home with lots of ideas, digitization, like I mentioned, KPIs, reporting as well. But every time he made a suggestion, the father would oftentimes say, "Son, that's not how we have done it here, and that's not how I grew up learning it." And even from my father, these are some of the things I would hear them say. This is not how I'm accustomed to doing it. This is not something that I want to do, you know. And he thought of a very creative way to make him understand. And he he made his dad kind of ponder a bit when he mentioned, uh, is it that he wants to hand his son over a business, or is it that he wants to hand his son over a museum? And I feel like that line pretty much changed everything. And when we shift from tradition to innovation, it's not something that happens overnight. Um, it's something that comes as you go along the way, and it's something that a lot of businesses as well and across the Caribbean need to adopt. Um, it's often said that the true heart of governance is letting go. However, letting go in the right way, ensuring that the new generation, they have the mindset and the idea, and they can carry on for generations to come. Not simply giving orders and say move this and do that. It's different, and you have to evolve and have them see the mindset that you had when you started that business as well. Um, Family governance, it's not just about keeping things in the family. I give an example with Kirsten. It's really about building out structure that serves the family for generations and for the future to come. Um, not just its past. So if your governance model is essentially built on you protecting your ego, whereby you sit on the helm at all time, um, you simply can't survive the next decade at best. Some of the best family firms I've seen are the ones that really create hybrid governance models, whereby you have a family council and you have a formal board. Some of them would prioritize succession conversations, not succession assumptions, and some of them really combine tradition with transformation. And most importantly, what I've seen is that some of those same family business would have shifted from asking what did grandpa do to what would grandpa do today. And I've seen that happening as well. In closing, I just want to say that governance, it's not a rule book per se. It's more of a relationship between the past and the future. It's really between emotion and execution. And for family businesses that are also watching, um, the grandpas per se, don't just pass on the business. I was alluding to passing on the mindset so that the younger folks could evolve. Because really and truly, that more than anything, more than any building, any bank account, any brand, that is the heart of what real inheritance is. And that's where I want to close my two bits on family governance. And I'll just leave it at there for now. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you very much, Rahul. I think that that was really incredibly good. Well done. So, you made some really, really good points as we look at family-owned businesses, and I liked when you asked that very provocative question. First, to examine, is governance a blessing or is it really a blind spot? And I love how you built it out into governance and family-owned businesses, being informal, it's rooted in trust and loyalty, but then sometimes it's it seniority or superiority, and the need to really move into structure and accountability as especially in Guyana, which is becoming such a much more robust economy. And this end you gave us was incredibly good to shift from asking what grandpa did to what grandpa would do today. Really,
Right. Thank you so
Rahul,
much.
we will engage in conversation a little bit just now. I want to now invite Anne for her to share her thoughts. And I want to say, because JMMB is one of those very successful banks that is a family-owned business. And that's why we wanted to ensure we have JMMB in the conversation as well. So Anne, over to you.
Okay, thank you very much. Yes, the line that stuck out for me was, is this a family business or is it a museum? Because I think that's really very important. And if I may, I would start there. So I'm certainly going to talk about Jamaica Money Market Brokers, JMMB, but I'm also going to talk about another company that I recently joined the board of, Island Car Rentals. And what I wanted to talk about the two of them is that one, JMMB is definitely a family owned business. For those who do not know, it is a business that was started by entrepreneur Joan Duncan. She was actually a banker and she wanted to build out a business that would be designed for small people. She felt that they were marginalized. Everybody was investing was, the big people. So this is what she wanted to do. Sadly, Joan passed, fairly soon after she began her journey, but began her business. But then her daughter and then her son, the daughter's twin, took over the business, and it's now very definitely a family-owned business and a public one. To talk briefly about Island Car Rentals, this company is older. It is 50 years old and it was started and operated by an entrepreneur called Michael Campbell. And he passed about 3 or 4 years ago. And at that time, it was purchased by someone else. But until that time, he ran it very much as a family business. So I feel comfortable talking about these two companies because they both have very strong cultures. And when we talk about tradition, we're really talking, we have to talk about culture. And the definition I always love for culture is the way we do things around here. And that is powerful, because the way you do things, there's an understanding, an innate understanding of this is what we do, and everybody can work effectively. And that is why you'll have a company like JMMB, 32 years old, now in 4 countries, 22 branches, moving from investment into banking, remittance, and insurance. So that innate understanding between people drives it. Island Car Rentals also starting small and now being the one where people, when people think of car rental in Jamaica, that's top of the mind. And that's because people have this understanding of this is how Mr. Campbell did it, this is how we want to do it. So culture is great. But here is a challenge. It's always going to be a little bit of an inhibitor. So the same grandpa factor we just spoke about, I have seen companies, not these two, but I've seen companies get very stuck on, when Mr. Edwards was here or Mrs. Smith would never have stood for. So that is going to be the challenge that you're going to face in that. Um, and what do you do when the family is still part of it? It's their dream. As I outlined GMMB to you, you would understand what it would be like to know that your mother had built this company from nowhere, stories of her having to learn coding to be able to code because she couldn't afford to pay anybody to do that. So knowing all of that and wanting to hold on to that dream of that's the way we do things. And then along come all these changes in 32 years and in 50 years in the case of JMMB. how do you actually navigate those changes? How do you deal with the fact that the customer demographics are different? How do you deal with AI, which is what we're talking about today? And I'm just going to tell you, drawing some examples from my experience as someone who has been involved in governance, as well as sitting as members of the board. I think we begin with the question of whose business, whose interests are we representing? In the case of a publicly owned company like JMMB, the answer is self-evident. It has to be the shareholders, and the shareholders are going to be much more than the family. So that can be easily settled. But how do you at the same time understand that what drove these companies to greatness? We know the statistics for small businesses, especially when they're locally owned. I've been seeing the ad for Massey and thinking, wow, 100 years, that is amazing, because many companies just don't make it that long. So when we have these businesses that are locally owned, we don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater. So what do we do? And Kamala, I want to thank you for this opportunity to really do this, because in thinking through, I said to myself, well, what is it that's important as you navigate tradition versus innovation? What is a baby and what is a bathwater? Well, I think we want to talk about, distinguish between the what and the how. So the how is the culture, the traditions on which you are built. So in the case of JMMB, for example, Joan Duncan, the founder, was very clear that she wanted to have a company, as I mentioned before, where everybody felt valued, everybody felt important. But unusually for the time, she also wanted a company in which employees, who we call team members, felt that they were a part of it. So there was this focus on internal and external customers. Um, the vision of love, which I've spoken at this conference about before in previous years, is a very powerful document written by the team members about how they envision JMMB to be. What is it like to work there? What is it like to be as part of a team? And what type of service that we give? So that is the how. The how in Island Car Rentals is that it's a company where people come back year in, year out. Every time they come back, they feel like they're part of a family. They like to sit. Somebody was telling me recently when we're talking about, how can we speed up the process? She says, no, but people don't want to have the process speeded up, because, one customer even said to me, why are you rushing me? Because they like to sit there and they like to have these conversations with people who they have known over the years. So that is the how. How do you manage that against the what, which is the strategy now? And the strategies, as we think about AI, these new opportunities, the bots that we spoke about earlier, how do we manage all of that? How do we manage now the new opportunities when we say we want to expand beyond our borders? I often think, what would Joan Duncan think now that, she started at Jamaica Money Market Brokers, and now, you're in 4 countries and you're in all these different sectors. How do you do that? Well, I want to suggest that I think governance has a lot to do with it. You want to have the family there. You want to have people who were, even if they weren't part of the family, they still are bringing those values, because after all, that is what made the company great. That is what made the company survive. So you want them there, but you want to manage it in a way that it is supporting and not holding back the company. So at JMMB, for example, as I mentioned, the current and the former CEO are children of Joan Duncan, and they therefore are very involved in our board. But we ensure that the committees of the board are always headed by somebody who is non-executive, so it wouldn't be them. And then also very importantly is the way in which it is managed. So I have sat on other boards beyond these two, and I'm always thinking about, wow, a chairman makes all the difference, because the tone at the top in which the chairman makes it possible for people to have frank conversations. So there's a lot of passion often, because this is the way we have done it. This is, people are going to push back, and the ability for somebody with a new way of thinking to say, well, yeah, maybe they won't love the bot, but if we don't get the bots, how are we going to manage in terms of prices? Or what about the next generation who needs that? So to be able to have those conversations where we disagree, but we're not disagreeable. We can have those open conversations. I think part of governance means having a chair who can manage that. So a chair at all committee levels. And, a plug for CCGI and other such entities, you kind of have to be trained to do this, because it may not come naturally, dealing with people who have these very strong passions, which does happen in such a company, in these types of companies. I also think your corporate governance policies, and we are really building those out at Island, because it being a small company, it family run, everything was centered around the founder. But now, as it is being run differently, you want to put in place policies that are going to guide people going forward. So that is happening. And I head the nominations, corporate governance and nominations committee at JMMB, and that has pretty much always been a part of our DNA. So you want to have those in writing so that you can turn to it when necessary. You always want to remember what's the end in mind. So the how isn't going to change. We're always going to be friendly and helpful and kind and loving, but the what is what is going to change the vehicle. So as I wrap up, I think that we really want to focus on the culture of the board. So that's also part of the how. We want to focus on um, making hay slowly. Change is going to be important, but you want to assure people that as you change, as you introduce AI, as you try to speed up processes and so on, you are doing so in a way that honors the traditions of the past. And I think my final point would be, I think you need to listen, because sometimes even I do get a little impatient when I'm hearing other views. This is how we used to do it and so on. But I have to understand that I don't know everything. I'm coming from a perspective of, well, this is the way everyone else is doing it. But does that mean that it is right? So again, we come back to the culture of the board, which must involve a culture of listening and a culture of respect. So I think I will end it there now, and be willing to answer any questions going forward.
Thank you very much, Anne. I think that was incredibly good as well, a very different perspective, that one that helps us to see how family-owned businesses can embrace both tradition and innovation, in a way that allows you to get the best out of it. A quick question for you though is is this company, the Island Car Finance, is that also now listed on the stock exchange?
Not currently, but soon. Yeah, Island Car Rental.
Island Car Rentals, yes. Forgive me, I was searching back for the name
Sorry,
quickly,
yes.
right? Because this is something that I know Jamaica is excellent with in terms of getting small businesses to
Yes.
also list on the stock exchange, which in turn drives a lot of their governance with okay, so it's being prepared for listing. All right, great. Well, thank you. So I like the ideas culture is great, and that it can support the organization, but it can also be an inhibitor. So really being able to balance that. And I like how you gave us the examples of that balance coming by having a strong chairman, having board committees that are headed by non-family members, so that you can have the conversation where people can disagree but not be disagreeable. Very nice. Thank you. Okay, so let's now bring our panelists all together. And I am going to say to our participants one time that, I'm opening it up for Q&A. So if anyone has any question or comment, feel free to raise your hand and let us know, so that we can engage the conversation with you. Because this whole notion of being, as Anne stated it, right? So it's the baby and the bathwater. It's always been there with us. How to ensure that you retain the things that are of value to you. And this is a critical time to have this conversation, because so much is changing, and a lot of things that how you have done it traditionally is going to change. And having the right kinds of conversations that would allow us to do that is important. So Anne, let me come to you and ask you to dissect that comment Rahul had made, that you said that you really like, which is what exactly is the business going to be? Are the children going to be inheriting what was the example? It was a business or a museum?
Yeah. A business or a museum. Well, I really do love that. I'm thinking of a blog about that. But because I think that we do need to understand that if we don't change, we will eventually die. We need to understand that when grandpa was operating, it was a totally different world, which is why, as I said, I like the question, what would grandpa do, how would grandpa operate the business now? And that is a challenge. So even as I mentioned, the team member saying, well, people like to come, they like to come and sit and have their coffee and so on. My pushback is, I get that and I understand that, but if I am standing behind that person, when they're drawing what we call in Jamaica long bench, and having this convo, oh yeah, the kids are growing up nicely and so on. Be like, lady, I want to get my car and leave. So we want to be very, very careful in how we do it, because yeah, that is a part of it. But and we're not going to say it's just for the museum, because there's going to be that segment. So I think now this is where AI comes in, that we can really manage it in a way that's going to allow those people who truly value that experience to continue to have that experience. And one of the things that I'm pushing, when I set up the customer experience committee, because I chair it on Island, as well as I had to set it up because it didn't exist before. One of the things I did was to get a colleague at UE who is a data analytics specialist, and I said I don't want us just to crunch numbers and understand what people are saying, which is kind of the past. I want us to be doing predictive modeling. What is it that we can be doing in the future? Now, all I can do is talk about these things because I can't do it, which is why I wanted her on the committee, because I think we want to understand, all right, what percentage of our customers love that? It could be, maybe it's 1%. That doesn't mean we don't value them, but we need to understand it's only 1 or 2%. And, therefore, how do we manage that so they continue to have that superior customer experience? But what do we do with more than likely people like myself who, yeah, hi, I'm fine. Yes, thank you. Can I get my keys? So I think data is what will help us, and then being able to use AI and whatever techniques in a very a way that's going to guide us going forward. And my final point on this would be feeding it back, because a lot of in family-owned businesses, there's a lot of intuition. We feel that this works and we know that this works, and anecdotal evidence, and that is not to be discounted. But I think we also must have data, and I'm big on that.
Mhm, mhm. Thank you so much, Anne. Rahul, I know you had your hand up a short while ago.
Yeah, absolutely. So thank you, Anne, for that. And really, the goal is not to abandon tradition. You know, tradition is the thing that gives us the value. It is the thing that really shapes us. The things that we all stand for in the business community: integrity, long-term thinking, loyalty. The goal of innovation is to just carry them really through systems that can take adaptation and scale. Governance is seen more as a bridge, where the legacy of our grandpas becomes leadership, and the history that they bring is more of a, I want to say, what's the thing with North South compass? The history is the compass that would guide us to where we need to be. It's not necessarily to restrict us in some cage, but to use what our grandpas did and just scale it much more. Yeah.
Thank you very much for that, Rahul. And Alasdair, I want to come to you because I mean your family is now into its fourth generation. So give us the practical side of how is it the thinking was as you went through those different generations. Were you guys asking that question? Not what grandpa did, but what he would do today?
Yeah, yeah. There's a lot of frustration in the transition for sure. Um, so yeah, I mean, Raul, yeah, you hit it on the head, and it's something we didn't think about saying. Well, what would yeah, dad as we called him do today? It was husband and wife. I'm third generation, so it was husband and wife, and it was the both of them. I think it's emotion, it's emotive, right? Like governance is emotive. It's you have to move people in order for the governance to be successful.
Mhm.
So yeah, I really appreciate what both of you had to say because having been through it and still going through it, it's kind of like when you're teaching your kids how to drive and you're constantly pushing your foot on the brake, the imaginary brake. You're like you can't give up the steering, and that's something that my parents did, and I know my parents and uncles had the same issue with their parent. But tradition is great because again, it's emotive, right? It's you remember these people. It's how you've built a franchise, a reputation. That's so important. But you do have to move. You have to. My uncle, he doesn't have a computer on his desk. So he has stacks of paper. That's how he does it. So he refused to move with the computer age, but still, incredible communicator. But it's just when generations will fight these changes, and I think what I'm hearing and what I completely agree with is it has to be a blend and a hybrid of the best of both.
Mhm.
So, and yeah, you do have to measure. You have to look at technology and how it can improve your business and measure it, and be prepared to go back and redo it, right? Because you didn't get it quite right.
Mhm.
But these tools and resources are so important.
Mm-hmm.
And I do think when you look at these entities, we're all small, and collectively, when you look at these islands in the region, it's all small. And so, with this technological change, it's being driven by the Magnificent Seven. It's seven large companies with a tremendous amount of money and the people to make these technological leaps. So we've got to govern it, we've got to police it, and hopefully, I mean, one of the things listening this week, the courts have been helpful, I guess, in helping people to ensure that their security is maintained, their personal information is maintained. But yeah, I mean, government and obviously the business is probably the first people to stand up and ensure that the integrity is there of the information that's being shared with their customers.
Yeah,
So
if I
what?
could just jump in for a second to say that, yeah, and I think, as we think about governance, that's going to be really important. So as boards, are we asking the right questions in terms of even the data that I mentioned? Because that often when people see things, it shakes up their, oh, I assumed that. So do we know, for example, what Gen Z or Gen X, do we understand that? Do we understand what's coming up in the future? How many people use, cell phones as opposed to the computer, as opposed to, yes, writing, the writing as your uncle does. So I think that part of governance would be us making that shift and sitting on the board and saying, we don't want to hear our customers like it that way. We want to see the evidence of that. And once and not in a hostile way, but in really challenging people to change their thinking or to question their thinking, because it may turn out that you're totally right, because you know the DNA of the customer, you know the DNA of the company. So you might be right, but I think we want to ask for evidence of that. And I maybe it's because I'm a researcher, but I do believe that there's data out there that we can get. And thankfully, again, it's becoming cheaper to get it. You don't always have to go hire an expensive firm. You can mine the data of the people using your websites. And we have to understand this as members of boards to ask those questions.
Mhm, mhm.
That's right. And I think, one of the conversations this week was talking about the steps backwards in some of these advances, right? Like Kamala, I couldn't quite, but I think it was the digital banking was an element of it. And it was a discussion maybe yesterday, and to your point, data is digital, right? So it's digital, sorry. So there is a record that's kept. It's just a matter of going and finding the record
Yes.
and preparing it in a way that's useful to the user.
Yeah.
So that, all of this data now is there for us to mine and make
Exactly.
useful of. And I think that's part of its hindrance, is that many people are reluctant to put that information into data, because whether it's the tax authorities or um, even your shareholders possibly. I mean,
Yeah.
some people definitely don't want this to be on record. So I think that's some of the reluctance to committing to digitizing certain things is the loss of privacy, because you commit it to numbers. It's data.
Mhm. I don't know about where both of you are or everybody else is, but I know in Jamaica, we're just inundated with data privacy. I personally have attended about 4 sessions on it, for the boards and where I work and so on, and we're all becoming very conscious of it. And I think it's beginning to seep down to customers so that they're aware or of what they are. But I think, yes, you're correct that people are very suspicious of this. Jamaica tried to introduce a system called NIDS, which would, have our data available to the government, and it was a huge pushback. So it has to be managed carefully, and I feel that our data privacy laws, from all the training that I've received, are very rigid. It's costing companies more, but I think, listening to you, that you are, it will actually pay off in the end if you can encourage your customers that, I'm not going to give your data to tax authorities or, the scammers, so that they're calling you in the middle of the night, that you won the lottery. So I think that is something that we should really invest more in. Yeah.
It was definitely needs was at the center of it, but there was a digital currency too. But
Yeah.
it was one of the programs, Kamala, that you
Right,
had.
right. Yeah. So there's, and I think we're going to have to invest in training people internally and externally about these things, because there's always going to be resistance to change. And at the base of that resistance is fear. So we need to understand what is the fear and address it. If it's not addressed, then fix it so that we can address it. Yeah.
Yeah,
And
we've been
what-
sorry, just to say, like, on the fear, because I think change is very difficult. But we've been consistent in our hope that, I mean, we one of the biggest problems we have is just turnover of staff. I mean, we've been running at 20%, and I think a lot of that, Anne, has to do with this new generation, or the newer generations, is that
Yeah.
they don't seek consistency. They're just happy for currency, and then they'll move on. But we have to address it. So in all of our rollouts, which started with just basic systems, administrative systems and stuff, in all cases we don't look for any form of redundancy of staff. As a matter of fact, we're very pleased to keep our individuals. Fortunately, we've been growing, but we need to retrain them, or not retrain them, but train them in different ways. Have them operate at the height of their license, because the data capture is being done automatically. Now we need them to take the results of that data and make informed decisions on it. They become they enjoy a higher value and quality of life.
Absolutely. So it's rethinking the jobs that people have, and again, that to bring it back to governance, as I also sit on the HR committee, these are things that we need to be familiar with, and to challenge the companies that I get so tired of people saying, oh, this generation, they don't do this, they don't do that. That's a fact. So what are we going to do? Because they're not going to change. So we must change. So, even the work from home thing, I am mystified that people don't get it by now, that they don't want to spend 2 hours plus in traffic just to get there and then repeat that going home. So figure out a way to make it work that they can sit at home and therefore retain them. And how many people are we going to see going through the door because, when the company was founded, everybody was sitting there, in a space where we could watch them. So I think again, these are questions that boards must always ask themselves and challenge each other at that level. And if you ask it at the board level, then the executives have to go find out the answers. So, but we can't just accept that we don't like it, so we're not going to change. Yeah.
Yeah,
And
you trust your gut. Even in this day of technology, you still have to trust your gut, and you should try it, right? Like you can try it with an office, one office, because I think you're absolutely right. And why should we demand 2 hours of travel in, 2 hours of travel back, on a faulty bus line that runs sometimes? Why should we require that? When we can give them much better quality of life in a more local setting,
Yeah,
or even at home.
exactly. Sorry,
yeah.
Kamala, we keep cutting you off.
That's okay. That's okay, because I mean it's driving home the point that change is part of what you have to accept. And
Totally.
Alistair, that may even accept the fact that today's culture is that employees would leave. They
They will
they
walk
will
through that
not.
door in a
Yes.
heartbeat.
Yeah.
You
And
so,
therefore,
mhm,
how can the technology help you to still retain your strength
mhm,
by ensuring that that institutional memory, which you normally want to have with your
yes.
employees, is retained, because there are systems in place that can now capture all of that in a very smart way. It's
Mhm,
not just data, but it's information, because the AI systems can analyze and advise and respond and think on its own. It's not just about the prompts. So one of the things that came to mind, as particularly, and as you spoke and gave that experience of at the car rentals business, you want to retain the culture where employees come and they sit and they want to have that little family association, but then you'd have other customers who don't have that same value and who just want to get the efficiency of it.
mhm,
That today's business world gives us the opportunity with these AI systems to build parallel type processes.
mhm, mhm.
So your employees can focus on the things that customers value,
Yes.
such as the relationships, but you can have the chatbots dealing with those who may be impatient and just came to collect the can leave. That's it. Don't worry to offer me coffee.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. So again, the data will tell you that it may not be as many as you think. And as you were speaking, I was actually thinking, maybe the reason that this person is having this long convo with you is just so they feel that they are seen and valued. You can use other ways of helping them to be seen and valued as well. So we really need to, start interrogating what we think that we know. And I believe that there's a lot of um, assumptions. We always say, assume makes an ass out of you and me. So we make these assumptions, but is it that's why I said the what and the how. The how is we want people to feel valued. We want them to feel important and cared for by the company. But how does that happen? For me, it happens when you show up on time. My car is ready in the case of the car rental. It's clean and it's what I ordered. I feel very valued in that case, right? So, do we know what it is that they're seeking? And and it changes so quickly because what they're seeking in 2025 may be actually different from what they were seeking in 2020, which was when the pandemic hit us. So we have to be constantly getting, this data and responding to it. People nowadays, I was thinking of this with all the unrest in the Middle East, that there was a time in which, people going to Dubai was just the weirdest thing in the world, and no, I feel this FOMO because I haven't been to Dubai yet, and everybody I know has been. So with that, do we understand that the shifts are happening and that people are doing things differently from the way they've always done them? And are we adjusting to that? Or are we just assuming that, everybody's just going to Miami like they always used to do and so on? So questioning our assumptions and, not to beat the horse to death, but getting the data, and it's easier. I get the point about the privacy, but we can mine it, and we can also mine it from people, because sometimes when you just get people to sit down and say what they know, that's a form of data too. Yeah.
Yes, and so we are seeing what because, and I'm glad you mentioned that what's happening in the Middle East as well, because it adds to the complexity of the situation. It's not just the changes being brought about by AI, but changes in culture as a result of many geopolitical movements that's going to happen, and we're going to have a very different world in no time. So there's a lot that we'd want to hold on to in terms of our tradition, recognizing what those things are, but at the same time understanding that we have to innovate because the world is very different, and being able to do that successfully. Just checking with our participants if there was anyone who wanted to make any comments, ask any questions. So as I'm not seeing anything in the chat, and I just saw, right, so we do have the survey link has been put in the chat as well. So we look forward to persons giving us their continued feedback for today. This has been a really brilliant conversation, and it's reminded me a lot of what Dr. Dion Chamberlain said yesterday. There's so much that is good about AI, but there are also a lot of risks. So it's not to just jump and adopt all of it, but it is to embrace it thoughtfully.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, and yeah, I agree. Everybody's using ChatGPT, right? We'll sit in our board meetings and somebody will say, "But ChatGPT, I just looked it up, and it says, so I think I think it's really important to announce and to be clear who your source is, and I think and to encourage it. It was mentioned that accountants use. Well, they don't even use calculators anymore. They're so advanced and beyond that. But these tools and resources are there for us to use, leverage, make the most of. But at the end of the day, in good governance and sustainability of business, we've got to make sure that we're protective and secure in how we do it. And so, testing and trying is really good.
And each of the countries that are represented here are at very different points in their growth, and being able to find and learn lessons from each other as we go through the different growing pains at different points, I think would really help us in the region in being able to do this more effectively.
Yeah, putting a charter together on best practices, at least, I think would be really good on how to incorporate or integrate AI. I think that would be really, really smart.
Mhm.
Okay, so it's just 20 past the hour now. Maybe we could do a quick wrap up and then we go to our break before we do the final panel for today. I think this discussion truly underscored uh, the importance of having both innovation and tradition, and that balance and governance that's going to give us just that sweet spot that's going to allow for it. So let's get some final thoughts. Your closing remarks, Alasdair, and then Rahul, and we'll end with Anne.
Great. Well, it's been a pleasure participating with you guys, and certainly hearing, like Rahul, you put it very eloquently in many different ways. But I've been fortunate enough to sit as a third generation member of a family, and that blend of tradition and innovation is a tough one. But just realizing that we stand on the shoulders of the people we came from. We do that in families. We learn a lot from our parents, from our brothers, our sisters. And you take those values, like I would put it down, we have very strong values, missions, and visions, and you take those and you sustain those, but you leverage resourcefully any benefit, any enhancement that you can get. And that's what I sort of, having listened to the group and the panels this week, I'm really convinced that AI is not something to shun away from. It's something to really to grab, and to get familiar with and to use where possible. And I certainly appreciate your comments too about setting the tone at the top. And as we all sort of represent our businesses, I think it's very important for us to feel comfortable to set that tone, and to expect that some of the things will just rip up and start over again. But so long as we're cautious, protective, and keep the humanity in our business, and our relationships, I think it put us in good stead.
Yes, thank you very much, Alasdair. Rahul?
Thank you. Okay, great. You can hear me. Um, the general consensus of the panel is that um, governance and family business is no longer just about preserving that tradition, but it's also using technology, using AI to prepare for what is coming. The world is changing, and through embracing technology, even having advice or the outside voices to be let into the room as well. The real success of businesses is to evolve with a lot of intention. Having the younger generation lead good governance is it's really about uh not just choosing tradition or innovation, but it's about continuing that family legacy and that generational legacy that we all want to see moving forward. And that's it for me.
Thank you very much, Rahul. Yes, Anne?
Okay, so there is change and there is change. I feel like AI is a paradigm shift because it is just so transformative. And that is good. And I feel that yes, we must embrace it. But we have to, as I think you said it, embrace it smartly. So what I think every organization, small, big, whoever, must adopt change management. So it's not, saying you have to bring in a fancy consultant, although that is good too, but really to recognize that when you're asking people to make this shift, whether it be your customers or whether it be your internal or external customers, there is going to be that resistance. There's going to be that fear that I spoke about. So there are tools, there are people who have studied articulate this thing and say, this is how you make the change. And rather than just saying, okay, tomorrow morning we're doing it this way, you know, or next week, and then getting all the pushback, we need to embrace that at the board level, at the board level, at the employee level, at the customer level, so that people can feel it, they understand the why, and also there's not that fear that I do business with this company, or I came to work at this company because of these traditions, and now you're throwing them all out. So that is why change management is so important, because it helps people it helps you to listen, hear the fears, respond to them, but it also helps you to gradually move people in the direction that you want. And I feel that so many organizations are just doing this thing immediately. And I feel the employees, because this is the lens I have on, being so frazzled, and they don't even know why we're doing this, but management sent out this email that we have to start doing this immediately. And customers getting frustrated because they say, I can't talk to a teller anymore. I have to use a machine and I don't want to. So I don't understand, honestly, why we do these things when there are systems and procedures that we can use, and we need to start using them.